I gotta change shoes. Okay, there we go. Now that's so much better.
Ladies and gentlemen, obviously, let's begin at the beginning. Normally, the protocol is that we give people a round of applause at the end of the event. In this particular case, we're going to break with all the protocols because I know a lot of people that are in the audience. I've seen faces, I've seen people with reputations in the audience, and I think that all of us can say unanimously that Mary probably doesn't really deeply understand how much impact her singing and her reputation has had in our lives, the way it's shaped the love that we've got for the music. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Wilson of the Supremes, come on. Yeah. So, where to start? Let's start with a quick question. Mary, I wanted to...
But I need to explain something.
Yes, my dear.
Okay, before we go any further. I'm not the only founding member of the Supremes, as most of you know. Florence, Diane, and Betty McGlone are the founding members of the Supremes. So I cannot take that credit on myself.
Okay.
And the people here in the audience understand and know that. So let's make that very clear.
Let's start with the first question. I was watching you last night in the opening of the exhibition, singing. I sang a couple of songs for us. It was great. And one of the things that struck me is actually, without any hesitation, I'd forgotten how great a solo singer you are, how great a singer you are. And I wonder if that actually, when we go back to the Supremes, there's been criticisms in the past, for example, that Diana was actually the least good singer of the Supremes. She had a very specific voice. And I just wanted to get your thoughts about just describe the different voices that were in the Supremes.
Well, I don't think that anyone said that Diane was the least good singer in the Supremes. That's not true. And I've never ever said anything like that. My point was always to sort of bring forward the fact that Florence Ballard was a great singer, and I was also a good singer. So I think people, and sometimes when you try to explain things or say things like that, people think that you're saying that the other person is not that good. That was not my point at all. My point was saying that Florence Ballard was a gospel strong singer, Diane was a pop singer, and I was kind of like the ballad singer. So we each had our own, good points.
And at a time and in a city which probably, without any hesitation, you could say was probably at its time the greatest musical city in the world, bar none. I mean, if you actually compare and contrast it with the other great regional city of the time, Liverpool, many of the Liverpool acts moved down to London and whatever, but there you were in Detroit, touring the world, phenomenal place. Just to get some grasp on this, simply your high school alone, who did you go to school with?
Well, in Detroit, we all kind of grew up in the projects. Detroit was really is a small town, and Smokey Robinson, I guess, was lived in the same neighborhood as Dinah Ross. I went to high school with some of the Miracles, which was Bobby Rogers. The person that did a lot of singing with, writing with Smokey Robinson was our guitarist, Marvin Tarplin, and he and I went to high school together. Florence went to the same high school as some of the Temptations. So we all came from pretty much the same neighborhood, even though it was kind of large.
Yeah. And when did you first remember the sense that Mary Wilson had the desire to be a singer? Where did the desire come from?
Well, people like Little Richard. There was Jackie Wilson. There was Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers was one of my favorite.
He was a bad boy, though, wasn't he?
He was a what?
He was a bad boy.
I don't know. I was too young. I mean,
no, he was a very bad boy, Mary.
Well, doctors don't tell secrets on other doctors. But we all got kind of bad later on. Yeah. But yeah, from just oops, we don't want to go there right now. Well, anyway, when I was born, my mother said that when the doctor spanked me, I started singing.
Yeah.
so I mean, I did that, but I never ever thought that it was different. I thought that everybody woke up in the morning singing.
Yeah.
I thought that everyone did that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until I became one of the members of the Primettes that was something very special. Yeah. Then I realized that talent was special, but prior to that, I would just, wake up and start singing, ooh! ooh, you know, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's just
And
something I
say a
did.
little bit about that photograph, because it connects you back to, like many Detroit people of your generation, to the southern states, doesn't it? And to the experience of moving north to Detroit, your family or whatever. So how big was your family? Was it a musical family? What were its origins?
I actually had one of the smallest families that lived in the Brewster Projects because my mother had, there were three of us, my baby sister Kathy, my brother Roosevelt, and myself. But everyone in the projects had families like with, you know, 8, 9, 10 children, so we were kind of special. We didn't have that many people in the family. But, you know, it's amazing because my mother couldn't read nor write, and it's something that I've often thought about. How music was something that we had more in our family because we didn't read papers since my mother didn't read nor write, and it was just a fun time, even though it was very, very difficult. My mom was on the welfare, you know, we got checks every week, we got food from the government, you know, processed cheese, powdered eggs, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah. But we had the music, so we were very, very happy.
Yeah. And in terms of the music itself, you talked about being that music was around. What kind of music?
Yes. Well, you know, this was in the early days of rock and roll, and you had people like Chuck Berry, you know, as we mentioned, Little Richard, and when I was a teenage girl here, I remember I used to be crazy about Jackie Wilson. That was one of my favorite people, and obviously Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers was one of my favorites. So I listened to rock and roll. That was my favorite music. However, I grew up listening to jazz in the household because that's jazz and blues because that's what my family more or less listened to.
Yeah.
Yes.
And were you someone that was in any way, as you would describe it, trained as a musician, or was it something that was just evolutionary?
I remember that when I was in about the 6th grade, maybe earlier than that, actually, I was in one of the glee clubs, and they just pulled me in there. And then every year after that, I was always in some type of musical group in school, you know, like the glee club, the choir, and when I went on to elementary school with, like the 8th grade, that's when I met Florence Ballard and started really, really singing. But I never had any formal training other than what we received at school. And we had great teachers. That's one thing about Detroit, Michigan. The educational system was so good that we had trainers to teach us. And my one teacher wanted Florence and I to be opera singers. Yes. And I remember we would sing arias like, "He shall feed his flock like a shepherd." And so,
yeah, it was really good. I'm sure you've all heard it. It was the B-side of Baby Love, right?
Right. And you know what, Stuart, was really funny is that our teacher, when we went on to high school, Mrs. Bro, I will never forget her because she had Florence as the, Florence was the soprano lead singer in the girls' choir, and I was the alto singer in the girls' choir, soloist. And she would really say to us, she would say, "Well, why are you singing that music? You in that group, you guys should be doing, you know, doing opera instead of singing all that stuff." So anyway, years later, she would come to our concerts there in Detroit whenever we worked there, and she would say to us, "Thank God you didn't listen to me." So that was kind of cool. But she taught us all the basic things about music, so we really did. But that was the only formal training that we had.
At that time in your life, as rock and roll was starting to influence in R&B and whatever, and you were having all these other influences from jazz and from music at school, were you aware that music was to some extent still segregated in the sense that there was a differentiation between race? Was that very clear to you?
Well, I don't know about being clear because when we were growing up, being black was just the way it was. You know, being colored, which we would call in those days, that was the way of life. And we listened to all basically black music, which was you know, the Sarah Vaughan's, the Joe Williams, the B.B. Kings, and it was basically blues, rhythm and blues that we listened to, and we just felt that that was what everybody was listening to. However, then when rock and roll came along, it sort of changed the demographics of the music in terms of what everyone was listening to, and listening to everything open. In the open, then I started listening to people like Doris Day, you know, in fact, that's when I became a blonde. I thought I was Doris Day, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you thought Tina Turner was the first blonde, but no, I was.
No chance. Now, of course, this other thing that's going on was the rise in the, if you like, the kind of live music scene in Detroit, the club scene. So take us back to some of those places that maybe you first started to grow up trying to get into as a young teenager, the 20 Grand or the Greystone Ballroom or whatever. What was growing up as a teenager like?
One thing about Detroit is that it really was filled with music, and as you said earlier on, we were surrounded with music. Everybody. Detroit was just a music town. You know, I know they say it was a car factory town, but it was really filled with music. And there was a street called Hastings. If you go into when you go into the exhibit, you'll see that they had something written about that. It was a strip of nothing but clubs. So I mean, just singing was everywhere. Does anyone have a napkin? I'm really warm.
Has anybody got a tissue or anything like that?
And so anyway.
And there you are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
No, you need to. He's getting it back. Yeah, he wants it back. Yeah.
Thank you. No, we can't do that.
No, hey, wait. Trust me, that would be framed, and if it wasn't framed, it would be on eBay tonight for 30 grand.
Well, anyway, so music was everywhere, and on Hastings there was lots of clubs. So I mean, that was something that everyone did. You know, just singing and go to clubs. We were far too young to go to clubs, but I remember one time we did go to the Flame Show Bar, and all of you Motown historians out there would remember Maurice King, who he was a big band leader, and he was a band leader for all of the people who came through the Flame Show Bar, like Sarah Vaughan, and I remember we went there and we met Sam Cooke there, and we were too young to even be there, but we did. He was very nice. But Maurice later got a job at Motown, and he was the guy that taught us all the harmonies and the things there, so that was really cool. But there were many clubs. The Flame Show Bar, 20 Grand, as you mentioned, the Greystone Ballroom. I remember seeing Jackie Wilson there once. Oh, let me tell you a story about Jackie Wilson. There was a time when, I have him up here. Did I get to him? Oh, he was there? Okay, he was there. Okay, we passed him. Okay. Anyway, but I remember later on in life when we became famous. We weren't really that famous, but we had a few hit records. We were working at this theater in Baltimore, Maryland, and Jackie Wilson was on the show. Diane's mom was our chaperone at the time. And so she wanted to go to lunch. And at these shows, you did like 5 and 6 shows per day, and you had movies in between each show. And so Mrs. Ross said one day to Jackie Wilson, she says, Jackie, honey, would you watch the girls while I go and have lunch? We're talking about, yes!
One of the hippest and probably one of the more romantic guys.
That was
in every
so
sense.
much fun. Yes.
Now, one of the other tributaries that's coming along at this time is the rise, really, of kind of image and style, and that's one of the things that the exhibition explores. When did you first begin to become passionate about fashion and look and visual style and the way in which you deported yourself?
Well, personally, that was something that I was always involved in, and Diane was always involved. We all liked fashion. I remember having a tea party when I was 8 years old, and I dressed up in my Aunt Ivy's clothes and got my first spanking of my life because I destroyed her clothes in my little tea party that I was having at 8. So I was really always into fashion. Diane was into fashion. In fact, she was taking up fashion in school and studying fashion design. So in Florence, we all like to dress up. So when we started singing, initially Diane and I would make some of the clothes, some of the little inexpensive dresses, and then we started buying clothes from Saks Fifth Avenue, which was definitely a dream come true. And then when we became very famous, we started having the designers do that. So fashion was something that we always loved. And when Motown or Berry Gordy saw us, when we auditioned, I think they recognized that we really liked being pretty. And so they used that. You know, and people have this misunderstanding that Motown made us dress up and they made us look like this, and they picked our clothes. They didn't do any of that. You know, we did it all. Of course, some of the chaperones would assist us, you know, and suggest things or whatever, but it was basically just the way we were.
And was that sense that you were actually coached? I mean, you read all the histories of Motown, and they all talk about, you know, deportment and how to conduct yourself and
The charm school,
the
artist
charm
development.
School,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
What was the charm school really like?
Okay, here it is, because you see my legs there.
Yeah.
They're kind of nice now, but they used to be, I mean, when thin was kind of
Mary,
like
I'm
not the
trying
thing.
not to look, but I can
Okay.
see what you mean, yeah.
Okay. Well, but I mean, but you know, when you're young, you don't know how to sit, because I'm teaching my grandchildren, my granddaughter right now how to sit, so I can't really do it. I should have on pants and I can really do it. But you know, girls sit up there like this, you know, stuff like that. And so in charm school, Mrs. Maxine Powell would teach us how to sit, because she said, one day, you girls are going to be singing before kings and queens. And we're like, sure. You know, she must be off her. What is she drinking, right? And so, I mean, at 16, you know, and coming from what we came from, well, of course, this was nowhere. But she taught us how to, you know, sit. And she said, ladies are always supposed to sit with their knees closed, no matter what, you know, how short, you know, because minis were in, you know.
Yeah.
So your knees are always closed. And then you can cross them at the bottom, you know, or you can sit really, your body language is very important. So we were taught that at Motown by Maxine Powell when we were 16 years old.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think that we've always used. I remember we were doing the Murray Decay show in New York, and lots of people on the show. Dusty Springfield was on the show, the Ronettes, it was all. And everyone would always say we could always tell all of the Motown acts when they came on, because their sort of body language, everything was really, you know, really professional. So that was something that we got from Motown Records.
Yeah, one of the things about Motown Records that is often said is that Berry Gordy, or at least the Motown system, borrowed a lot from Detroit and from the car plants, in the sense of the division of labor, that people had a job and they did the job and they did it to the highest specification, and some of the tracks kept coming and were reused again. Is that the way that you saw it? Did you see it as a kind of, you know?
No, we didn't see it like that. You know, another misconception that people have is that we were just taken and just totally changed over. What people have to understand is that the black experience in America in that time was very important to the black family, and we were taught by our families how to be good little girls or good little boys. When they would tell us, when you go out in the street, you represent the black race, so you must act accordingly. So we were taught very well before we even got there. Now, the professionalism that we gained at Motown was more of teaching us the etiquette, you know, the finer things, so that we would know. But Mrs. Powell put it best, and she said, she would tell us this, and it was so wonderful when she would say it, because we'd feel so good, you know. She would say, you ladies and you guys are just diamonds in the rough. We're here just to polish you up. And that's really what was going on. And that was such a great compliment, because we really were, it was our decision to be there. You know, no one just said, okay, we're going to make you into stars. We were there because we wanted to be there.
You mentioned earlier on there in the conversation when we became really famous, you said.
Well, we were always famous in our minds.
Indeed, indeed. But what was the moment, the one moment in time that Mary Wilson personally has imprinted in her mind as the time she became really famous? What made you think, wow, this is a bit different? What was the moment or the time or the experience?
Let me just add something a little bit more for me that was more important than that fact. It was when I met Florence, Diane, and Betty. That's the moment that I really knew what and who I was. Because when I met them, it was almost like they were the other parts of me that I didn't possess. And I loved them equally, and I saw just who I was through them, and just singing. Sort of, at that moment, I'm the same person now that I was at that moment because of meeting them. I think had I not met Florence, Diane, and Betty, and eventually Barbara, I wouldn't be the woman that I am. So that was, for me, more defining as a human being, to find something in life. And I try to tell my son this. He's still looking for himself. He's 30. You know, sometimes you're not fortunate to find something that you can be passionate about in life to make your life meaningful. And I think we were for me, that was the most fabulous thing that ever happened. So the records, as I said earlier, in our own minds, we were already famous because when we found each other, we knew just who we were, what we were good at.
And were you conscious of having a kind of driving sort of ambition or whatever? Because there's so many other great singers, you've listed some of them, who didn't have quite the same level of fame as the Supremes. Other people who were fantastic at Motown that just simply disappeared after maybe one or two songs or whatever. So what was it that gave you that sense of longevity?
I would say, you know, Berry Gordy taking a big interest in us and believing in us and seeing how dedicated we were, because we were young girls. I mean, originally he didn't want us there because he only saw young girls, and for him he probably said, you know, I don't want these little teenage girls running around my studio and getting in trouble and then I'm to blame, you know, so he turned us down. But after seeing that we were so dedicated and so in love with what we did, you know, he believed in us too, and he gave us the writing team of Holland Dozier Holland. And that's what, that was that defining moment, because they gave us the music. Yeah,
and all those great songs. But before that happened, he put you on. You were on this big. I've seen the photograph of you on the bus, the coach, the bus that takes you all over America, and you're doing the Motortown Review, probably 63, 64, something like that. What was that experience like? You know, here you are, a young black Detroit girl, in a single coach with some pretty heavy guys, let's be honest.
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was great.
Was it great? And were you always chaperoned, Mary Wilson?
Yes, we were. Yes, we were. We were chaperoned till we were well into our 20s. We were probably 25 when we had chaperones. In fact, the first trip here, I think Diane's mom was with us on that particular trip, and that was 64. Yeah. So we were, you know, as I said, Berry Gordy was very afraid that we would, you know, probably end up pregnant or something like that, because it was like all these guys running around Motown, you know, Marvin Gaye, you know, the Temptations, the Four Tops, you know, the Spinners, the Contours, and it's like, well, I better, you know, so he was pretty adamant about always having someone with us to take care of us. Yeah,
and you're driving through areas where, you know, in the past where black R&B singers or soul singers or jazz singers or whatever were actually living largely in segregated lifestyles when they toured the southern states and that. Did you ever feel that you witnessed that you were party to that you could see it close up?
Party to what?
Well, the segregation in the South at the time.
Oh, you know, that's a very good point, because when we were living in Detroit, you know, in your own neighborhood, I'm sure it's like that in most areas. Your ethnic group live. You know, you live in one area. You know, it's the Irish area. It's whatever area it is. Italian area, the Chinese area, and all that kind of stuff. Well, we were the same way. We lived in the black area. So, you know, we didn't have a lot of interaction with segregation because it was in our area. It was cool, and the people who had stores and things like that, who were of other ethnic groups. Well, our teachers were, some of them were white, some of the store owners were white. So, you know, they knew us. They knew us by name. So we didn't really come in contact with that. When we started traveling, yes, we did. Or like my family was originally from the South, and I would travel down there to the South, you know, in summers. And that's when I would see a lot of it. So we were well aware of what was going on, but it wasn't so blatant. You knew if the water fountain said colored, that's the one you drank out. You didn't drink out the one that said white. So you just did what you were supposed to do, and it was never really a problem. You know, unless, I remember when my father passed, it was the year I graduated in 61 or 62, something like that, and I had to go south to bury him with my family, and my cousin who lived in the South, Josephine, and I went to buy his little socks and the gloves and all that kind of stuff. And so I was telling the guy, I want, you know, some nice socks for my dad. So he gave me these cheap pair of socks. And so I looked at them. I told my cousin, these are cheap. I don't want these for my dad. Give me something else. And she was saying, shh, don't say it too loud, you know, because you might get hurt, you know. And I'm like, what? I mean, you know, I'm paying for what I want. You know, I mean, I wasn't being disrespectful, but it was just the idea was that was what I was supposed to just have and you know, accept it. I'm like, no, my money is here. So in those instances, you know, you knew what your parents had been telling you about, and you understood it. And so it was something when we got to the South, we understood that then because we were young adults at that point. And it was kind of odd to perform, you know, you have to remember that Stevie Wonder, Mary Wells, Marvin Gaye, all of us were on the same bus, and we were, you know, doing these great shows. And one show, say the black audience would be on the bottom of the floor, and the white audience would be in the balcony, and then another one they would switch, you know. But there is a story. On this particular bus, we were in Florida, and we were driving in, and there was a motel, and there was a pool. And so we had been driving all day. Everyone was really tired and hot and everything. And we're like, pool, okay, great, check in. Then we go jump into the pool. And all the white people who were in the pool jumped out. And we were like, oh. And so anyway, we didn't care. We just come because we're young, you know.
Yeah,
when you're young, you know, you're not trying to do anything. You just want to have fun. And so there was music playing, and some of the music from the show was on there, and the people found out that we were the
show.
stars.
Yeah.
They all came back in the water. We had a great day. We all just partied together, you know. So music is one of those things I found out that it's really. That it brings people together.
Yeah.
It really, really does.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Holland Dozier Holland, and now I've got to ask you this, Mary. If it was reduced to, there it is, Hitsville, USA, if it was reduced to one single song that you love, there they are, the Temps, yeah, the
There they are.
Velvets, there they are. There they are. Holland Dozier Holland, right?
That was my mini documentary.
One single song. You've got to reduce it all down to one song. What's the greatest song and why?
Of Supremes or Motown,
yeah,
or any
Holland
song?
Dozier Holland for the Supremes.
Oh, gee, that's hard.
That's hard, you know, but there's no such thing as a free lunch, Mary.
I know. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I've learned that.
Yeah.
Gee, you know, I really like some of the Four Tops, some of their songs. "Baby, I Need Your Lovin'."
Yeah.
That's one of my all-time favorites. "Seven Rooms of Gloom." I don't know if they did that one or not.
Yeah.
But you know, of the Supreme songs, gee, "Reflections" is great.
Yeah.
"I Hear Symphony" is great. I wasn't as crazy about some of the earlier ones because they were kind of young and we wanted to be grown up. Yeah, so they were like too bubble gum for us. But then we started doing "You Can't Hurry Love" and things like that, and we really liked those.
Well, last night when you came on stage, you even did that.
Yeah, well, because you know what? Because people, that hand movement, and just Charlie Atkins too. We have to bring Charlie up into this. Charlie Atkins was also in the artist development department, and he taught everyone the moves. And that was one of the most famous moves, other than the Temptations walk. And so, you know, when I do that, it's because almost like The Happening. You know, the record The Happening was the soundtrack to a movie. And The Happening record became a hit record, and the movie was a flop. But, you know, we were all thrilled that we were doing a soundtrack back at that time. You know, we Supremes did a lot of first. You know, the television specials. We had the first television special with the Temptations. We did a lot of commercials. So there was a lot of firsts that we did. But that hand movement, it was great because it is as famous as the music itself. Which shows you what a combination that Motown machinery was. You know, people say, well, don't you hate Motown? You said this and you said this, you didn't get paid. But that's a whole nother story. It has nothing to do with the beauty of it. That, you know, when you look back when you're young and you see that you didn't get as much money as you should. But I mean, the adults, they know that stuff, and you know, you don't know it. You sell your soul just to get in there and sing a song or record. So you're not thinking about the money. Later on, you think about the money. And the fact that I brought all this up, people think that I hate Motown. I'm like, no, I love Motown. I just think that they should have been fair. But all the record companies were doing that. You know, I spoke to some of the Drifters, and they were saying the same thing. You know, in fact, they said they were on salary, which was really bad. You know. So anyway, the hand movement became very famous. Yes.
Now, I want to talk a bit about the year 1967, when you were already very, very famous, and it was the beginning. You mentioned there the release of The Happening, which I think was about February or March of that year.
Was it?
When
you know more. You remember that stuff? I don't remember.
I
don't remember. I have to ask one of my friends.
No.
I called him up and said, "Hey, Rusty, what did we make in 1965?"
Well, Mary, excuse me, I'm one of these complete bores of whom there's thousands in the audience.
Right. Oh, okay.
Okay. January 1967, it's the new year, and I think actually you'd been doing the Orange Bowl in Florida. You'd been doing an ice capade or something like that that you were doing in Florida, and you returned back and there was snow all over the city. And it was the beginning...
In Florida?
Not in Florida, no, in Detroit.
Oh.
All right, you remember, right? No, Florida was where you dived into the pool.
I'm 64, I'm not senile. Quick, trick question, huh, Stuart? That's
okay, right. Snow on the ground. Florence Ballard is beginning to... Something's happening in the Supremes. What was happening? Give us your truthful version of what actually was happening.
Well, you know, if you really want the real truth, Stuart, you got to read my book.
Both versions.
I know it's not here in the VA, but maybe you can tell them they should get it here, okay?
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
This is the real story, and I really wrote about that, about Florence in depth. It's a very long story to explain it all, and perhaps I can just do it quickly, so everybody really understands. You know, Florence was abused when she was very young. Mm-hmm. We were in the primates as well during the time, and the young man who did this was, I think he was caught and put in prison, but she was a virgin and was raped. Mm-hmm. So then, of course, we got to deal with Motown, we became famous and all these kind of things, and I think that Diane and I really felt that, you know, she was over this. You know, we didn't know the depth because we were very young at the time. We just didn't understand it. But it totally destroyed Florence. Yeah. I mean, she was destroyed at that point. Thank God we still had our, you know, we had our fame and all that stuff. And as I said, we really felt that she was okay, but she wasn't. Yeah. So eventually it came, and she never got help because during that time, unlike now, people are helping children who are abused, and they're really, you know, you go to therapy, you do all these things. But in those days, you didn't do that. You kept quiet. You kept quiet. You didn't want people to know. No one, you know. So you didn't get the help that you should. And that's what happened to Florence. She didn't get the professional help to help her get rid of some of these things. So whenever anything would go wrong, then she would get unhappy. And then, of course, she would get more and more unhappy. And, you know, people, you start drinking to cover up the pain, this and that. So people were saying that she was drinking too much, but she was just hurting. Yeah. And eventually, it got to the point where she was unable to really do her job well. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what happened to her. So she was put out of the group. I mean, she didn't just leave. Yeah. But, and I try to say this in all fairness to everyone, many times you hurt yourself when you're in pain. And so that's kind of what happened to her. And it was very, very, very hard to look at as a friend. It was very, very difficult for me. It probably destroyed me as well in many ways. I mean, I learned a lot. I grew up. Seeing a friend in pain is so horrible. So even now, you know, I think that friends need to help friends. You know, if you see that they've endured something, really try to get them to get the professional help.
And during that period, so many myths were built up about Motown, about the breakup of the Supremes, or at least Florence leaving the Supremes and that. What's the thing that you think is now commonly said about Motown or about the Supremes that just simply is wrong? What's the common...
I don't know so much about Motown, but I tell you the one thing that's very wrong is when people don't understand how much Flo, Diane, and I love each other. Yeah. Always. Florence went to her grave loving Diane so much and never really, you know, saying anything. And Diane loved Florence very, very much. And I love Diane, and Diane loves me. The business and all these things, money, fame, has destroyed a lot of people. It really has. Their relationships. Yeah. Because it's just. Anyway, that's one of the things that I would really like for people to understand how much we loved each other. And that's why when the young lady introduced me as the founding member, it's like I can't take that credit, it's all three of us. We were totally equal in that.
And if we move a bit forward in the year 1967, it's also the year of the riots in Detroit. 43 people, no? 67, yeah. Okay. Okay. And 43 people dead.
What? 43? My God! What if I knew? Oof.
Well, where, Mary Wilson, were you?
What?
I think where were you? Because your folks were in Detroit, but you were in Las Vegas, I think, weren't you?
No. Oh, no. I was there. I saw sofas going past my window.
Yeah.
That's an inside joke. But anyway, anyway, no, I was actually at home at that point, and directly after that is when I decided to move to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Because we had been doing television shows and our television specials and everything on the West Coast and falling in love with it because it was, the weather was, as you mentioned, it was cold in Detroit, and the weather out there was nice, and I had decided to move out there. And when the riots happened, I just said, okay, I'm gone.
Yes. And when you look back to those days, I mean, the city was torn apart and all the rest of it.
Yes.
Maybe actually tore the heart out of the city for that
Yes.
period of time and whatever. Do you know, when you look back to those days now, I think it was the house you bought, Buena Vista, they say, wasn't
Sure.
it? Was it Buena
Yes.
Vista?
Buena Vista.
Buena Vista, and I think all three members of the Supremes bought their first house, or
On that
whatever.
street, without knowing it.
Without knowing it,
we all ended up
And
having
did you
a
actually
house
ever
on the
stay
same
there?
street.
Did you stay
We
in
were
the
like,
house?
God, I was trying to get rid of him, you know. But I mean, that was really kind of odd, we found out, because we were actually over here touring and couldn't look for homes. And so we had, you know, the people find homes, and then when we got back to Detroit, we looked at all these different houses they had found for us, and each of us chose our own house without knowing, and then we realized it was on the same street. Very odd, very odd.
And did you sell it when you moved to Los Angeles, the house, or did you
No, I
keep it?
kept the house for years.
Yeah.
Yes, until I finally realized it wasn't going to get any better, because after the riots, as you said, it had really just destroyed the city. But you know, the riots can't take full credit for the city dying. The reason for the riots, one of them was, you know, people didn't have any work. You know, the factories were closing down, and so it was a lot of different reasons.
Now, the other bizarre thing about 1967, I was looking statistically, it was the year when the most young Detroiters died in Vietnam. Young people dying in Vietnam in that year. Your brother, I think, was in Vietnam.
My brother was in Vietnam, and he said it told the things he had to do in the service. He was so embarrassed. He was never the same. He had no idea. I think it destroyed a lot of people's lives who are still walking around today because of that. War is a horrible thing.
Yeah, and the Supremes, you went to, you didn't sing in Vietnam, but I think you went to the American forces with Vietnam. Okinawa, yeah. Tell us a bit about that, because that's, you know.
Well, we were on tour. We went to Manila and did all the Air Force bases and things like that. We, you know, performed for the guys and girls over there. And then we also, as you said, we were diverted from Vietnam because they said they couldn't protect us and they didn't want us to go with us. So we were diverted to Okinawa and other places. And then when we came back, we went to the hospital for the vets in Washington, D.C. Anybody knows which one? I can't right now. I think
Would that be the
Walter
Reed in
Walter Reed,
Philadelphia?
yes. And that's where we saw some sites that would just destroy you. You know, young men, 90% burned, you know. It was just really horrible. And I really understood, you know, the tragedy of war on the human life. And as I said, my brother's never been the same since he came out of Vietnam. He's still trying to get his life back together. So it's something that's horrible.
Although it came much later, the soundtrack, obviously, to that era was Marvin Gaye's What's Going On.
Yes,
Tell us a wee bit about Marvin Gaye.
He was fine.
Yeah.
All the girls loved Marvin Gaye. It was like, woo. Oh, he was, but more than that, he was a gentle human being.
Yeah.
Very, very gentle. He was the kind of person that if you were around him, you felt that you were in the presence of an angel. You know, he was that kind of, his soul was like that. I know that people say a lot of things about him, you know, drugs later in life and all that stuff, but from his music, you can tell that he was a very deep, kind of caring person. And I think that's why he was unable to really cope with life, because there was so much going on that he couldn't control and couldn't understand it. And so he was in pain a lot. You know, for whatever reason or other than that. But yeah, he was a great person. But he also was very talented. You know, a lot of people don't know that he played the drums on the Marvelettes song, Please Mr. Postman. He was a great pianist. He couldn't dance, though.
Yeah.
And you know, they say all black people can dance. It's not true.
Not true.
But I remember that we, the Supremes, were jealous of Martha and the Vandellas because they had the opportunity to sing background with him, and we didn't. Well, we actually did. We did Can I Get a Witness with him, and I think there was another one we did. Howard Kramer from Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Which other one? Well, I know we did. I kind of got a witness. We did
Yeah.
the background for that one.
That's
I got one that they don't know.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Now,
But he was a wonderful, talented man.
yeah.
Yes.
Now, of course, another towering influence, you mentioned him earlier, is Berry Gordy himself.
Sure.
I wanted to kind of go back a bit in time, back to the Gordy family, because they're actually quite a remarkable family when you think about it. The sisters had I think they had the fashion photographic franchise for the Flame Show Bar. They had businesses all over Detroit. I mean, this was actually quite a significant family in the
Well,
black
you know,
community,
people
yeah.
say that like it's something special, and it is something special, but there are many, many, many families like that.
Yeah.
Fortunately for Berry Gordy was that he, started Motown, and that gave him more prominence and more visibility than a lot of black families who are really doing things like that. Everyone can't become, as famous as Mr. Gordy did, but his family was perhaps responsible for, helping him,
Yeah.
giving him the idea that he could, pursue his dream. And they did loan him the money to start Motown. Everybody in the family was very progressive in terms of their work and what they did and just constantly doing things. So, it paid off. It really paid off. But I really think that the family foundation, as I mentioned earlier, in the black family was much more structured than people really assume. And sometimes I become very, very upset when people, say, well, how do you feel being black and poor? It's like, I was happy.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of good roots in the black community.
Yeah. What would Gordy's real skill be? If you were to describe what it was that he brought, apart from owning the company, obviously, what was the skill?
Well, he's Sagittarian, so he has this great skill of organizing people.
Yeah.
He knows what people are good at and what they're not good at, and that's what I think that's his forte. He was able to, because he gets a lot of credit for things that were not his idea, but the credit should be that he knows what each person is good at, and he gets that out of them. So that's his even though it wasn't his idea, he knew that that person could do that job. And so I would say that's his biggest credit. But also, he was a great songwriter. He did a lot of songs for Jackie Wilson and all that. So he overseed all of the music that came out of Motown. So even though Holland Dozier Holland or Smokey Robinson or Norman Whitfield or Mickey Stevenson were the writers and producers, it would still have to pass through Berry, and he could tell each one. Well, we never knew if he would say something was wrong with it and change it just so he could have his name on it. or if it really made the song better. But obviously they were all number one, so it must have made it better, But that's his, I would say, his forte.
And going back to '67, at the beginning of the year, Mickey Stevenson left. At the end of the year, I think Holland Dozier Holland left. Berry Gordy wasn't that great at keeping people, was he?
No,
you disagree?
No, I disagree. I think that it was at a time when we were growing up. And, Berry started, as you said, with the family structure, and he was the controller, he was a ruler, he knew everything. But when children grow up and they now become, masters at the trade, then they want to negotiate. And Berry is the kind of person that, he only wants to negotiate on his terms, and when, whoever has children out there, you realize sometimes that children are like that, They get up and they say, well, no, this is what I want. And if you're unpliable and unflexible, sometimes the children will rebel or whatever against you. And that's kind of what happens. So it's not that because we all still love him and we all go back to him. As you could tell by the Motown 25th, things like that. And we're wondering if they'll have a Motown 50th. But no one's called me, so I don't know.
Mary, do you ever, we all look back, and it's so easy to look back with hindsight and be smart after the event or whatever, but one of the things that did happen is that in the end, artists started to challenge across all, not just at Motown, across the music industry generally, about rights ownership, about who wrote songs, about the value of their contribution and whatever. Give us your personal perspective on that, on looking back now, from 2008 to the era of the 60s where you were the singer?
Well, I think I really just answered it. I mean, people grow up and they change their minds. I mean, just take the example of Marvin Gaye, who, originally was an artist, and then he wanted to to write his own material, and that was really something that artists didn't do at Motown. You left that to the people who did that best. And, you know, he decided, no, I got to do this. I must do this. So that was happening a lot. I mean, that was what was going on. People were deciding what they now wanted to do with their lives. Now, and especially since you're a star now. You know, you say, okay, I want to do this. And so, you know, it was a time after the riots and all, the world was changing. I mean, you know, we had a nice time of people progressing, and then all of a sudden the world was opening up, things were changing. And that was what was going on. And that's what happened to Motown when they moved to the West Coast. And it was just the day of the 60s was kind of like over. And that's when Diane left the group. You know, and we started traveling all over the world. I've got to just bring this up. I want to mention, too, here, this is Princess Margaret there on the screen. And we were doing all these great things. You know, we were on Ed Sullivan's show more than any other artist, except that puppet, Topo Gigio.
Yeah, Topo Gigio. He's good. I liked him.
And sometimes I think Ed Sullivan thought I was Diane because he always came over and shook my hand. Here we are with, you know, Sonny Cher, Sammy Davis, the Loving Spoonful. We toured with them. They were like really strange. One of our favorite groups, the Andrews Sisters, on the Sammy Davis show.
No, that's Tarzan, isn't it? That's Tarzan. Why the hell were you playing nuns in Tarzan?
Because we were good girls.
Oh, come on. You've been on tour with Jackie Wilson. You are not a nun.
And that was really cool. We enjoyed that, too. We had a great time filming that. And this was the first television special that I was telling you about. These gals are in the exhibit. They were made by Bob Mackey. This was over here at the Talk of the Town.
That's right.
What year was it, Stuart?
Oh, I don't know. I don't do the Beatles. I don't do the Beatles. No, not interested.
You don't do the Beatles. So it was like 1968, because Cynthia's in there. That's how I know. See. But that was at the Talk of the Town. Satchmo was one of my idols. We got to take that one down. Something going on there. Anyway, this bread wrapper.
Yeah, the bread wrapper. I like the bread.
Right,
That's good. Yeah.
White bread. Supreme's white bread.
Yeah.
Okay. And we got so much flack from the NAACP for endorsing white bread. It was still the 60s, you see. And so we would tell people that, well, that was the only kind of bread that everybody ate. I mean, they didn't have, like today you got every color of the bread you want, right?
Exactly.
Wheat, rye, da-da-da. Then you only ate white bread, you know. So anyway, that was ours, and we endorsed Coca-Cola. We were really the first pop group to start endorsing commercial product. So we endorsed the white bread, Coca-Cola, and we also had Arid underarm, I don't have that one here, underarm deodorant. We endorsed that. We had our own wig line. And then, of course, comes my books, but we're not up to that point. Let's go back.
No, let's go back.
Okay, I just want to catch up to date there.
Time's
That's what I know. We got to move on, darling.
Go to the audience in a minute, but just before we do that, when you look back, and you were talking there about the period, do you ever look back, Je ne regrette rien, this song says, do you ever look back, is there a regret, is there something that you'd change?
The regret that I would have is that I wasn't as wise as I am now. But you know, when you're young, you're foolish. You're young, you're foolish. You know, I was certainly that. But I enjoyed my life a lot. But I think that had I been a bit wiser, I would have made a few different choices. Probably would have helped Florence a little bit more. Probably would have asked for a little more money. Probably would have gotten the name of the Supremes, which I did get 50% of that ownership of that name. But you know, just things like that. But I don't have what you might call real regrets.
No.
Yes, I mean, I may have made some silly, stupid mistakes along the way, but I don't really have any major regrets, and so I'm very, very happy about that. Of course, here we were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yes, indeed.
As Mr. Howard Kramer will know, he's here representing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Howard, stand up, let everybody see you.
Go on, there he is. There he is.
Howard came to my house and looked through all my boxes and trunks with the gowns. So he was the first person who actually saw them. While they were, right. So thank God I did that. So this was a great moment here. The only sad moment about this was that I was the only one there. Diane wasn't there, Florence wasn't there. And so it was one of those hollow kind of moments of just thoroughly, I was thoroughly happy. But I was sharing with just myself, and I wanted to so much share it with the
them.
other ladies, our success, you know, say that our dreams really did come true. So, you know, we traveled all over the world. We were on that show and with was at the Boss and the Beach Boys, and I think the Drifters was there. We have a star on the Hollywood Boulevard. If you ever get to Hollywood, go down La Brea and Rodeo. You can walk all over us.
Yeah.
And so that's
the story.
That's it. That
it's
is
a
the
great story as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Wilson, we're going to come to questions. Yep. Mary has to rush in 10 minutes. She's going to do the Jules Holland show. So at last you get some license fee value. It's going to be recorded on the telly. Questions, gentlemen there and then there, please. Yes. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mary. Could I just ask you about Jean Terrell? Because Jean Terrell was brought in after Diana Ross left the group.
Right.
And my understanding is that she left because she became very dissatisfied with the way that Motown was treating the Supremes. Why do you think Motown did change its attitude towards the Supremes in the 70s, and why did the group eventually disband?
I don't really know, but Jean wasn't the only one dissatisfied. We all were dissatisfied. It just so happens that they could walk away. Jean and Linda could walk away because they didn't have a stake in the group the way I had a stake in. So even though I was unhappy about the treatment we were receiving at the time, I couldn't walk away and leave the name Supremes. I would not do that, and they did walk away and leave. And that's one of the reasons why many times I'm unhappy when they come back and take over the group and tour as the Supremes, because they actually left it and did not help it. So I'm not very happy about that, and I will never be happy about that. I hope that God will help me to get over it. But it's something that I just feel very, very bad about. Motown, for some reason at the time that Stewart was talking about, was making that move and things were changing, and they just weren't interested in us. And they probably didn't have the belief. Jean is a great singer. She did a great job. She gave us some of our greatest songs, and it should have worked with her doing it. It wasn't her fault. It was just the machinery was not behind us.
Yeah. And you would never want to fight her brother, would you?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. There's another question there.
I'd just like to say thank you, Mary. I've followed you for many, many years in your solo career, and last time I saw you was last summer in Lake Tahoe.
In Lake Tahoe, yeah.
And I'm sure, as many people here do, through good times and bad times, the Supremes have always been there for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
But as this gentleman was saying, I've got all the whole collection, but technically, I think the combination of Cindy Birdsong, Jean Terrell, and yourself are definitely the best technically Supremes to sing.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. My take on that, because a lot of people want to hear how I felt about that group. I loved all of us, but each one was different. We were the Jean Terrell, Cindy Birdsong, and Mary Wilson. We were the 70s Supremes. We were not the hit-making Supremes. Okay, we were another group, and I want people to be very clear of why I defend the original group against the 70 group. Okay, because we made the history. In the 70s, we were great, but we were another group.
Okay. There's a gentleman here with a question. Yes, sir, with the blue shirt on here. Can we take a microphone here? Yep. Yeah, it's just passing over. Sorry. Just 2 seconds. Yes, sir.
Okay. 64.
I was wondering whether or not there would ever be a chance that Mary and Diana and Cindy would ever get back together again for a reunion tour.
Well, certainly there's an opportunity, but you know, Diana's got to want to do that, and at the present time, she really doesn't want to do it. So you know, I'm of the thinking that it's best if she doesn't want to do it. We can't do it unless we all want to do it. Oh, sure. I mean, I think there's a chance, and I'll be there to do it. You know, yeah. But she's got to want to do it. I can't make her. No one can make her until she gets ready.
Could you pass the microphone to the gentleman there? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi. Is it true you've got a new album coming out? Yes, I have a new CD. I do. I have a new CD that's due out later this year, and it's with the company of the Holland Brothers, and their company is producing me. I've already recorded probably 90% of the album, It should be out later this year. In fact, we're speaking to a company here, Vibrant, here
Yep.
in the UK, that may be the company to release,
To bring it out.
release it here.
Yeah.
So look for it.
Reasonably priced, Mary?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people wanting to buy it. Just right behind you, sir, there's a gentleman there, yes. And
Hi, Mary. I came in from San Francisco to see you.
Hey, yeah. Well, you saw the jazz show then, yes?
I didn't get to. I'm so sorry I didn't get to.
okay,
Hopefully,
okay.
maybe next time you're back
Okay.
there. I wasn't living in the city at the time. But I just want to say I've been a fan since the 60s. And I can remember being a little white boy in Gary, Indiana, buying your album. And I had to put the cover down because the other white people would look at me. And how much that changed my life.
you said in Gary, Indiana.
Yes, we're
Yeah,
Jackson
why
5.
weren't you out
Jackson
getting,
5,
discovering the
I
Jackson
didn't know them.
5 instead of listening
But
to
I was
music?
just wondering, I love the exhibit. It was beautiful. I wonder, do you think Diana Ross will get a chance to see it when she's here,
Well,
supposedly?
I mean, certainly, she may, because she's going to be working in Liverpool, I understand. And I'm sure she'll sneak in.
I think it's
She'll
such a
probably have on
tribute.
big glasses and a
Oh,
wig.
she will. It's such a tribute to all of you. Thank you.
Yes, there's a gentleman over here in the blue shirt. We've already had, I think, Lake Tahoe in San Francisco. Can you upstage this?
No, much more shallow question. The show's all about your clothes, and I'd like you to tell us about your favourite outfit you've ever worn.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I
Mary
didn't hear
Wilson, we'd like to know throughout the whole period of your singing stardom, the one outfit, the one outfit that you love.
Oh, well, you know, it changes all the time. It really does. Since I'm here in London, I like the pink Beat It, the ones that we wore for our command performance with the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret, Princess Anne. So yeah, in fact, they've always been some of my favorite gowns because they weigh maybe 35 pounds each.
Yeah.
And they're all heavily beaded with the rhinestones, pearls, you know, bugle beads, everything. So they're like the top.
Yeah, the top, yeah.
Yes.
And that one you were wearing there with the shoulderless
Which one?
The one, the very nice one there, the last one we saw.
Oh, that was mine.
I like
That
the
was-
dress
you
you're
like that?
nearly wearing.
Yeah, right.
Right. Now, look, Mary, we've got to get a bit serious here. If you were to move into another genre of music, would you have liked to have actually pursued a different... Let's go back. This idea that you started this session today singing an aria, singing an opera. Would you like to have done classical music or opera or some other form of non-popular music?
No complaints, no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. But I have learned that all you give is all you get. So give it all you got. I've had my share, and I drank my fill. And even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still. I can't get that off. To see what's down another road beyond the hill and do it all again. So here's to life and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. Funny how the time just flies. Our love can go from warm hellos to sad goodbyes and leave you with the memories you've left behind to keep your winters warm. For there's no yes in yesterday, and who knows what tomorrow brings or takes away. As long as I'm still in the game, I want to play for laughs, for life, for love. So here's to life and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. May all your storms be weathered, and all that's good get better. Here's to life. Here's to love. Here's to you.
Superb. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Mary Wilson.
Okay,
We'll let you go.
I gotta go.
We gotta go, babe.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Take care. All the best.
Okay.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Wonderful.
I did
Yeah.
too. All right. My
Yeah.
lashes are coming
All
out.
the best, yeah. We'll see you later. Take care, honey.
Okay.
All the
Bye-bye.
best, all the best. Yeah, cheers.
Bye-bye. See ya. My lashes are coming off. Oh.